Part 4, the world of ideas. This world of ideas is divided into global media cultures and the globalization of religion. So first subtopic ay global media cultures. With regards to global media cultures, it's said to be na globalization and media are partners and act as a unit. Situations created through globalization and media make people conceive they belong to one world called the global village. It is a term coined by Marshall McLuhan in early 1960s. So he is a Canadian media theorist. Global village was used to express the idea that people throughout the world are interconnected through the use of new media technologies, which will later be discussed as we progress in the discussion. Yung new media technologies na to includes from television to what we have right now in the social media platforms. According to scholars, the world is globalized in the 1900s upon the advancement of media and transportation technology. Globalization exists, even hindi pa na-coin yung term na globalization. So changes in migration patterns where people move easily and advancement in media which brought changes to human life heightens globalization. As a process, globalization worked silently for millennia without having been given a name, and as a trend, it had been with us since the beginning of history and further argued that multitude of threads connects us far away places from an ancient time. So, kahit na nasaang sulok pa kayo ng mundo, through globalization, we can be connected. Isa ang media sa instruments na ginagamit natin for us to connect with one another. So in here, we have globalization, which refers to economic and political integration on a world scale. It is said that it has a crucial cultural dimension in which the media has the central role, meaning si media ang nagagamit din natin para yung ating culture in one place can be shared to other places. So global institution like the media has an impact upon the structures and process of the nation state, including its national culture. In that sense, media globalization is about how most national media systems have become more internationalized and becoming more open to outside influences, both in their content and in their ownership and control. With that, we have definition na media encompasses everything that we use to communicate with one another and at the same time to transfer idea and impact others in terms of culture. So we have here the different functions of media. Again, media is a means of conveying something, such as a channel of communication, according to Jack Lu. Technically speaking, when we say media, it can be a person's voice kasi it is a means for us to convey something. However, when commentators refer to media, these are the technologies of mass communication, which can be print, broadcast, or digital. Kapag sinabi nating print media, it include books, magazine, and newspaper. Kapag broadcast media naman, it involve radio, film, and television. And digital media naman cover the internet and mobile mass communication. While it is somehow easy to define the term media, it is more difficult to determine what media do and how they affect societies. Kaya si Marshall McLuhan declared that medium is the message. When he say medium is the message, he did not mean that the ideas are useless and do not affect people. Rather, his statement was an attempt to draw attention to how media as a form of technology reshape societies. Thus, television is not a simple bearer of messages. It also shapes the social behavior of users and reorient the family behavior. Date back to 1960s kung kailan na-introduce si television, it has steered people from the dining table where they eat and tell stories to each other to the living room where they silently munch on their food while watching primetime shows. So, nandun pa din yung presence ng bawat isang member ng family while watching the television. And then, Television has also drawn people away from the other meaningful activities such as playing games and reading books. Today, yung television ay somehow na-replace na ng smartphones. Kasi instead na tayo ay kakain sa isang table tapos manonood ng isang show, we now have our individual smartphones kung saan yung iba habang kumakain nagbabrowse pa sa phones nila. Itong smartphone ito, it allows users to keep in touch instantly with multiple people at the same time. So take into consideration in this sense the effect of the internet on relationships. So prior to the cell phone, there was no way for couples to keep constantly in touch or be updated on what other people do all the time. So the technology or the medium and not the message makes this social change possible. Kasi possible naman na hindi nagbabago yung message, however, nagbabago yung medium na ginagamit natin. And through the change of medium, nababago din yung ating message na nare-receive. Kung dati kinakailangan pa nating maghintay ng few days para makareceive ng isang letter, through instant messaging right now, mabilis na yung pagdating ng message. So Matluhan added that different media simultaneously extend and amputate human senses as part of the global village. Kasi si Marshall McLuhan, he started discussing the cultural imperialism na nakapaloob sa introduction ng television into family homes. And as time goes by, kung paano itong television na to, nababago yung message na ita-transmit natin. At kung paano nababago yung way ng pag-receive natin ng message. So moving forward, there are 5 time periods in the study of globalization and media, namely oral communication, script, the printing press, electronic media, and digital media. Let's begin with oral communication. So globalization as a social process is characterized by the existence of global economic, political, cultural, linguistic, and environmental interconnections. And yung flows nun make the many of the currently existing borders and boundaries irrelevant. It means na yung borders natin, yung cultural boundaries natin ay na-erase due to oral communication, which was caused by the globalization. Through oral communication, yung mga storytellers dati, kinakabisado pa nila yung inanarrate nila na story sa ibang tao. Pero as time goes by, nagkaroon ng script, nagkaroon ng printing press, and so on. Therefore, hindi na nila kinakailangan pang i-memorize kung ano yung sasabihin nila. And it is said na yung idea na yon or yung act ng pagkakaroon ng script ng mga storytellers amputate their sense of memory. Just like what Marshall McLuhan mentioned earlier, na different media simultaneously extend and amputate human senses, which is applicable even up until today. Human ability to move from one place to another and to adapt to a new and different environment are facilitated by sharing information of other people. Kaya essential ang oral communication even before the script, the printing press, electronic media, and digital media. At isa sa mga means for us to develop communication across culture ay language. So language serve as the lifeline of globalization. And without language, there would be no globalization. Without globalization, there will be no language because we will not be forced to create a means for us to communicate with other people. Number 2 ay script. So writing is humankind's principal technology for collecting, manipulating, storing, retrieving, communicating, and disseminating information. So writing may have been invented independently 3 times in different parts of the world. In the Near East, China, and Mesoamerica, writing is a system of graphic marks representing the units of a specific language. Meron din namang cuneiform script, which was created in Mesopotamia. So present-day Iraq is the only writing system which can be traced to its earliest prehistoric origin. So this antecedent of the cuneiform script was a system of counting and recording goods with clay tokens. The evolution of writing from tokens to pictography, syllabary, And alphabet illustrates the development of information processing to deal with larger amounts of data in ever greater abstraction. Habang nag-globalize tayo, nagiging complicated na din at yung mga na-present natin na data. That's why we cannot stick with just one writing system. And human communicate and shared information and ideas through script, which is the very first writing system. So the origin of writing was in the form of carvings, such as wood, stone, bones, and others. The medium that drove humans to globalization was the script of the ancient Egyptian written in papyrus. Kung saan nga, itong si papyrus ay from the papyrus reed na ginagamit natin as a medium for us to write the symbols back then. Then, written and orderly arrange of documents pertaining to religious, cultural, economic, and religious practices are done through scripts for this dissemination to other places. Through script, we were able then to preserve the history that we have. So this can also be handed down from generation to generation. Dahil sa pagkakaroon ng information ng mga scripts na to, it serves as an important tool for globalization as it considers the integration of economy, politics, and culture to the world. Kasi that serves as our basis. That serves as our foreknowledge regarding what we are heading to. So the great civilization from Egypt to Rome and China were made possible through scripts. It is very important for us to document what we have and para mag-serve na din to as the framework for the generations to come. Then, third natin ay printing press. Printing press naman is a device that allows for the mass production of uniform printed matter, mainly text in form of books, pamphlets, and newspapers. It revolutionized society in China where it was created. So Johannes Gutenberg further developed this in the 15th century with his invention of the Gutenberg press. Sa oral communication, syempre wala pa tayong script. So we highly depend on our memory. Sa scriptures naman, meron tayong wood, stone, bones, and other medium para ma-preserve yung information. However, dahil siya ay kina-carve or ini-etch siya individually, wala pang existence ng mass production. And out of that problem, nakapag-create sila ng printing press. At ito nga si printing press ay ginawa or developed ni Johannes Gutenberg, which was developed in the 15th century. So here are the consequences naman ng printing press. So una, it changed the very nature of knowledge. It preserved knowledge which had been more malleable in oral cultures. It also standardized knowledge. So dito, nagkakaroon na tayo ng standardization when it comes to language. Bakit po ba kinakailangan nating i-standardize yung isang language na gagamitin? Balik tayo sa purpose ng printing press. We aim for mass production. Therefore, kinakailangan yung language na gagamitin natin for that material na ipiprint should be common to those audience or to those readers which will receive the copy of your material. Second, print encouraged the challenge of political and religious authority because of its ability to circulate competing views. Printing press encouraged the literacy of the public and the growth of schools. Lands and culture were learned by people through travels. News around the world were brought through inexpensive and easily obtained magazine and daily newspaper. People learned about the world, and indeed, printing press helped foster the globalization and knowledge of globalization. Dito na ngayon papasok si electronic media, kung saan hindi na natin kinakailangan pa na magkaroon ng tangible copy of those information. So when we say electronic media, it refers to the broadcast or storage media that take advantage of electronic technology. They may include television, radio, internet, fax, CD-ROMs, DVD, and any other medium that requires electricity or digital encoding of information. The term electronic media is often used in contrast with print media. Kasi nga po, kapag sinabi natin electronic media, meron tayong software na gagamitin or meron tayong soft copy na tinatawag. At kapag print media naman, we have the tangible copy or the hard copy. Ongoing globalization processes such as economic, political, and cultural are revolutionized by a host of new media in the beginning of the 19th century. These electronic media in the likes of telegraph, telephone, radio, film, and television continuously open up new perspectives of globalization in the 20th century. The only available mass media in remote villages was the radio back then, while film was soon developed as an artistic medium for great cultural expression, which is also one of the goals. Cultural expression is also one of the reason kaya tayo nagkakaroon ng globalization. So the most powerful and pervasive mass media is television, as it brought the visual and oral power of film with the accessibility of radio. So the introduction of television was a defining moment in globalization. Once again, si television ay na-introduce noong year 1960s or ng decade ng 1960s. Thus, the world is proclaimed as a global village because of television. So, digital media naman, these are phones and televisions, which are now considered digital, while computer is considered as the most important media influencing globalization. Computers give access to global and marketplace and transformed cultural life. Andyan yung Microsoft, Apple, Google, and Facebook. It paves the way para magkaroon tayo ng connection with other people around the globe. Or we do para magkaroon tayo ng access to different information while sitting in one place. So our daily life is revolutionized by digital media. People are able to adopt new practices like fashion, sports, music, food, and many others through access of information provided by computers. Nagkakaroon din ng exchange of ideas, establishment of relationships, and linkages through Skype, Google, Chat, and Zoom. So as I've mentioned a while ago, si cultural imperialism ang isa sa mga naganap out of the integration of media and globalization. Nandito din yung tinatawag natin na global village. It all started in the introduction of television in the 1960s. And then dito, meron tayo ng 1970 to 1976 the idea of cultural imperialism. So 1980s, specifically 1985, nagkaroon ng critics ang cultural imperialism, which was begun by Ayan Ang. Then, sa 1990s naman, texts were received differently by varied interpretative communities kung saan andito na yung critics na kasama din ng ipinresent ni Ayan Ang. Ito naman ay led by Elihu Katz and Tamar Lieves. And then sa 2000 naman, nagkaroon tayo ng Splinternet and cyber balkanization. At isa sa mga evidence nun ay ang Arab Spring and Women's March in 2011. So let's discuss each. Beginning with the cultural imperialism and the introduction of television. According to Matluhan, different media simultaneously extend and amputate human senses. The new media may expand the reach of communication, but they also dull the user's communicative capacities. Think about the medium of writing. Before people wrote things down on parchment, exchanging stories was mainly done orally, just like what I've mentioned earlier, or the storytelling per se. And even now, na meron tayong instant messaging, meron tayong different social media platforms, some people neglect the power of writing letters. And dahil sa existence na din ng different social media, yung way ng pagsulat natin ay naiiba na din. Sa spelling, sa punctuations, sa capitalizations, and even sa manner ng pagsulat, nababago na din dahil sa media. Yes, it extends our connection, pero at the same time, it amputates one of our senses. It can be writing senses, it can be our communicative sense, it can be our oral sense. Kasi some of us can speak face to face, pero hindi nila kayang ilagay sa writing ang kanilang sinasabi. And some of us naman can write efficiently, pero hindi nila kayang i-voice out yung sinasabi nila. Another thing, whenever we are using cell phones, they expand people's senses because they provide the capability to talk to more people instantaneously and simultaneously. On the other hand, they also limit the senses because they make users easily distractible and more prone to multitasking. This is not necessarily a bad thing kasi who wouldn't want to have a multitasking skill? However, hindi kasi pare-parehas sinibibigay natin na attention sa lahat ng kausap natin at the same time. Alright. The question of what new media enhance and what amputate was not a moral or ethical one according to McLuhan. New media in that sense are neither inherently good nor bad. Ang problem ng attention ay naibibigay natin to different receivers natin at the same time will all boil down to our capability as a speaker or as a resource, and at the same time kung paano natin i-balance yung time natin. Si McLuhan, ang kanyang main point is to draw attention to historically and technologically specific attributes of various media. At doon ngayon papasok yung si Global Village na tinatawag niya at yung introduction na din ng television. Once again, according to McLuhan, the technology and not the message makes for this social change possible. Out of that global village, they present on television. So McLuhan used his analysis of technology to examine the impact of electronic media. Since he was writing around the 1960s, he mainly analyzed the social changes brought about by television. McLuhan declared that television was turning the world into a global village kasi he meant that as more and more people sat down in front of the television sets and listened to the same stories, their perception of the world would contract. If tribal villages once sat in front of fires to listen to collective stories, the members of the new global village would sit in front of bright boxes in their living rooms in form of television. In the years after McLuhan, media scholars further grappled with the challenges of global media culture. A lot of these early thinkers assumed that global media have a tendency to homogenize the culture that we have. So they argued that as global media spread, people from all over the world would begin to watch, listen, and read the same things. This thinking arose at a time when America's power had turned it into the world's cultural heavyweight. So commentators therefore believe that media globalization would create a form of cultural imperialism whereby American values and culture would overwhelm all others. To explain it simply, with the introduction of television and the idea of Marshall McLuhan na kung saan si medium daw ang nag-change na ating social behavior, not the message itself, it was taken by commentators wherein they said na ito din yung means para magkaroon ng cultural imperialism. Paano ba nila na-consider na ito ay isang cultural imperialism? Through the existence of television, through the existence of media, yung kanilang culture or yung culture na meron sa nila ay i-adapt ng mga nanonood, ng mga tumatangkilik sa kanila. Nagkakaroon ng homogenization when it comes to culture. Nabibreak na yung diversity na hindi porket taga-Western countries ka or hindi porket taga-Eastern countries ka, hindi mo na mai-adapt yung mga Western cultures dahil hindi ka nagpupunta doon. And with that, nagkaroon ngayon ng critics, nagkaroon ngayon ng different views regarding the cultural imperialism and the global village. Yung pagkakaroon ng cultural imperialism. Some view it as a positive effect, and some view it as a negative effect of globalization. They see it as as positive effect because that means that we are effectively transferring message from one point to another. Some view it as negatively kasi that means na we are losing our identities. Kasi kung ano lang yung nakikita natin sa TV, yun lang or dun lang iikot kung ano yung nalalaman natin. Then, in 1976, media critic Herbert Schiller argued that not only was the world being Americanized, but that this process also led to the spread of American capitalist values like consumerism. So, similarly, for John Tomlinson, cultural globalization is simply an euphemism for Western cultural imperialism, since it promotes homogenized, westernized consumer culture. Let's take for example yung the customer is always right na phrase. And na-adapt to ng iba't ibang country dahil pinapatronize nila mga napapanood nila sa television from America. So yun, ang isa sa mga evidence na kakaroon tayo ng Western influence. These scholars who decry cultural imperialism, however, have a top-down view of the media since they are more concerned with the broad structures that determine media content. Moreover, their focus on America had led them to neglect other flows of information that media can enable. This media or cultural imperialism theory has therefore been subject to significant critique. Dito na ngayon pumapasok yung ating critics ng cultural imperialism. Proponents of the idea of cultural imperialism ignored the fact that media messages are not just made by producers, they are also consumed by audiences. Therefore, hindi lang fault ng producers kung magkakaroon ng cultural imperialism o hindi. Kasi, they argued na may participation din dito yung consumers or yung recipient ng mga messages na yon. Halimbawa, kayo na nanonood, ibig sabihin, meron din kayong participation kung may influence ba kayo or ma-westernize ba kayo or hindi. So in the 1980s, media scholars began to pay attention to the ways in which audiences understood and interpreted media messages. The field of audience studies emphasizes that media consumers are active participants in the meaning-making process who view media or the text in the media studies, and then here, text simply refers to the content of any medium. So through their own cultural lenses, they do have different understanding on the same show, for example. So in 1985 naman, Indonesian cultural critic Ayan Ang and studied the ways in which different viewers in the Netherlands experienced watching the American soap opera Dallas. So through letters from 42 viewers, she presented a detailed analysis of audience viewing experiences. Take note, same show, different cultural backgrounds. At doon napatunayan niya na totoong may participation or may kinalaman pa din yung reception ng isang viewer regarding sa isang show at hindi lang yung producers ang may fault when it comes to cultural imperialism. So rather than simply receiving American culture in a passive and resigned way, she noted that viewers put a lot of emotional energy into the process pleasure based on how the program resonated with them. Meaning, they connect with the television show because of their personal experiences and not because of what they see alone. We can have different interpretation on the same text or different understanding on the same show. Next. In 1990, Elihu Katz and Tamar Lievas decided to push Ang's analysis further by examining how viewers from distinct cultural communities interpreted Dallas. So they argued The texts are received differently by varied interpretative communities because they derive different meanings and pleasures from different texts. Thus, people from diverse cultural backgrounds had their own ways of understanding the show. However, Russians were suspicious of the show's content, believing not only that it was primarily about America, but that it contained American propaganda. American viewers believed that the show, those set in America, was primarily about the lives of the rich people. So, apart from the challenge of the audience studies, the cultural imperialism thesis has been believed by the renewed strength of regional trends in the globalization process. So they see na hindi lang applicable yung cultural imperialism na nangyayari para sa American culture, kundi may apply din natin to sa Asian culture. For example, meron tayo ditong Hello Kitty, Mario Brothers, Pokemon, K-pop, Sushi, and Jollibee. So, itong mga to proliferate worldwide through the globalization of media. Yung Japanese brands ng Hello Kitty, Mario Brothers, at saka Pokemon, they are now indelible part of global popular culture. Hindi lang America or hindi lang Western countries ang nakakagamit ng global media para magkaroon ng cultural influences to other people, kundi lahat ng may access dun sa global media na tinatawag natin. Next ay K-pop or the Korean pop and Korean telenovelas, mga K-drama. It was successful regionally and globally. At even sa food, may apply din natin yung cultural imperialism na yon. Example, sushi, yung pagkakaroon ng samgyeopsal, milk tea. For Filipinos naman, we have Jollibee, na hindi lang sa Pilipinas nag-exist. So given these patterns, it is no longer tenable to insist that globalization is unidirectional process of foreign cultures overwhelming local ones. Globalization will remain as an even process and it will produce inequalities. Nevertheless, it leaves room for dynamism and cultural change. So this is not a contradiction, it is merely a testament to the phenomenon's complexity. Si cultural imperialism, hindi porket sinabi na cultural imperialism ay nag-favor lang para sa Western countries. Globalization will always be uneven. With that, nagkaroon tayo ngayon ng social media and the creation of cyber ghettos. Dito na ngayon papasok yung cyber balkanization and splinternet na tinatawag natin. So by now, very few media scholars argue that the world is becoming culturally homogeneous dahil nga dun sa analysis na nangyari out of the studies of Ian Ang and Elihu Katz as well as Tamar Lieves. So apart from the nature of diverse audiences and regional trends in cultural production, the internet and social media are proving that the globalization of culture and ideas can move in different directions. While Western culture remains powerful and media production is still controlled by a handful of powerful Western corporations, the internet, particularly the social media, is challenging previous ideas about media and globalization. As with all the media, social media have both beneficial and negative effects. These forms of communication have democratized access, and anyone with an internet connection or smartphone can use Facebook and Twitter for free. These media have enabled users to be consumers and producers of information simultaneously. So the democratic potential of social media was most evident in 2011 during the wave of upspringings known as the Arab Spring. Without access to traditional broadcast media like TV, activists opposing authoritarian regimes in Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya used Twitter to organize and disseminate information. Their effort toppled their respective governments, and more recently, the Women's March against newly installed US President Donald Trump began with a tweet from a Hawaii lawyer and became a national, even a global movement. Social media also have the dark side. Though it can move people closer and it can organize people to a certain movement, in the early 2000s, commentators began referring to the emergence of splinternet and the phenomenon of cyber balkanization to refer to the various bubbles people place themselves in when they are online. In United States, voters of the Democratic Party largely read liberal websites, and voters of the Republican Party largely read conservative websites. So this segmentation notes an article in the journal Science has been exacerbated by the nature of social media feeds, which leads users to read articles, memes, and videos shared by like minded friends. Because, as you know, social media is an echo chamber. So, as such, being on Facebook can resemble living in an echo chamber. It reinforces one's existing idea or beliefs and opinions. So, this echo chamber precludes users from listening to or reading opinions and information that challenge their viewpoints, thus making them more partisan and close minded. This segmentation have been used by people in power who are aware that the social media bubbles can produce a herd mentality. It can be exploited by politicians with less than democratic intentions wanting to whip up popular anger. The same inexpressiveness that allows social media to be a democratic force likewise make it a cheap tool of government propaganda. Merong mga allegations na si Russian dictator Vladimir Putin have hired armies of social media trolls or the paid users who arrest political opponents to manipulate public opinion through intimidation and spreading of fake news. New American intelligence agencies established that Putin used trolls and online misinformation to help Donald Trump win the presidency, which is a tactic that the Russian autocrat is likely to repeat in European elections as they seek to influence others. In places across the world, Putin imitators replicate his strategy of online trolling and disinformation to clamp down on dissent and legitimate critical media. Critics of the increasingly dictatorial regime of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan are threatened by online mobs of pro-government trolls who hack accounts and threatens violence. Some of their responses have included threats of sexual violence against women. As the preceding cases show, fake information can spread easily in social media since they have few content filters. Unlike newspapers, Facebook doesn't have a team of editors who are trained to sift through and filter information. If a news article, even a fake one, gets a lot of shares, it will reach many people with Facebook accounts. So, this dark side of social media shows that even seemingly open and democratic media may be co opted towards undemocratic means. Global online propaganda will be the highest threat to face as the globalization of media deepens. So, internet media have made the world so interconnected that the Russian dictator can influence American elections. It is our role as netizens to evaluate kung tama ba yung nakikita natin, nababasa natin sa social media. Because once again, not all you see ay totoo sa social media. Yung existence ng trolls ay hindi lang naman nangyayari sa Amerika. It exists even in the Philippines, even in other countries. And as mentioned, yung mga trolls na yun are paid users who harass political opponents. So let your principles speak for you and don't stoop down to the level of trolls. As consumers of media, users must remain vigilant and learn how to distinguish Fact from falsehood in a global media landscape that allows politicians to peddle what President Trump's senior advisors now call as alternative facts. Though people must remain critical on mainstream media and traditional journalism that may also operate based on vested interests, we must also insist that some sources are more credible than others. Hindi porket may nakita kayong image ng isang tao tapos may caption na ganito, papaniwalaan niyo na kagad. It doesn't go that way. You are literate individuals. So exercise your skills. Magbasa kayo. A newspaper story that is written by professional journalists and vetted by professionals professional editors is still likely to be more credible than a viral video produced by someone in his or her bedroom, even if both will have their biases. People must be able to tell the difference between facts and falsehood. Moving forward, we have here the popular music and globalization. As you know, lagi naman may influence si globalization with music, and at the same time, si music ang nagkikarry on din ng globalization from one point to another or from one country to another. Now, when it comes to music, it participates in reinforcing of boundaries of culture and identity. Popular music explains the complex dynamics of globalization not only because it is popular, but music is highly mediated. It is deeply invested in meaning and has proven to be an extremely mobile and resourceful capital. For as we know, si music can be understood through the emotions na nakakabit dun sa music. Kasi possible na hindi natin naiintindihan yung lyrics, pero naiintindihan natin yung emotion na nakapaloob dun sa music. So world music is defined as the umbrella category which various types of traditional and non-Western music are produced for Western consumption. It is a label of industrial origin that refers to an amalgamated global marketplace of sounds as ethnic commodities. Globalization is not something that happens to music or has a certain impact on it. Changes in musical culture constitute one of the aspects of globalization, and they concern institutions, system of value, and social groups involved in musical life. The change in popular music is not the outcome of globalization, but rather popular music industry is part of globalization phenomena. Kaya, they take effect hand in hand. People who travel the globe, teaching and preaching their beliefs in universities, churches, public forums, classrooms, or even as guests of a family, play a major role in the spread of culture and ideas, and that can be made possible through music. Each is a carrier of another. Music as a carrier of globalization, and globalization as a carrier of music, with the same purpose of spreading the culture or let passing the information, transferring the knowledge. In conclusion, there is an intimate relationship between globalization and media, which must be unraveled to further understand the contemporary world. Globalization relies on media as it means to conduit for the spread of global culture and ideas. As asked by Jack Lula, could global trade have evolved without a flow of information on markets, prices, commodities, and more? Could empires have stretched across the world without communication throughout their borders? Could religion, music, poetry, film, fiction, cuisine, and fashion develop as they have without the intermingling of media and cultures? The answer there is, of course, no. Hindi possible na magkaroon ng flow of information sa market. Hindi possible na magkaroon ng global trade na iniiwasan natin na magkaroon ng flow of information sa market, sa prices, commodities. Hindi po pwedeng mag-stretch ang isang empire kung hindi siya makikipag-communicate with other countries. Hindi din magkakaroon ng development in different cultures or in different aspects of the society kung walang existence ng media and cultures. Media is one of the big players when it comes to globalization.